I made these male and female base meshes for my game. And if you're new to Blender like me, you're in the right place. I'm a game developer without an art background, and over the past month, I learned how to model characters. Before this, my only experience with humanoids are these blocky mannequins I made for the demo in my previous devlog. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact steps I took to build these stylized male and female base meshes, along with the references I used to get a pretty good result. Welcome to episode 6 of my devlog series on building a game incrementally, where every episode comes with a playtest for you to try. I've divided this video into sections for the pelvis, torso, limbs, feet, and hands, which is also the order in which I worked on the models. Without further ado, let's get into Blender. Now, some of you might be wondering, why not just use free assets? After all, art is really hard and it takes time to learn. If you look at my channel, there's been a 1-month gap since my last upload. But after going through this challenge, I feel I can create any asset that I need. And, more importantly, I feel that making your own assets is the simplest, though not necessarily the easiest or shortest way to give your game a distinct aesthetic. I thought it was worth it, and you might too. I'll cover each of these work in progress steps that I saved along the way, and go over the key points in detail with you. I started by blocking out a pelvis structure for female and male, based loosely on a tutorial by 2am, and there are a couple things to note here. So if I tab into edit mode, you can see that if I add loop cuts to the thigh area, there's a clean loop that goes all the way around here, and same thing for the crease here. The second thing to note is that the holes are based on hexagons. So when I started this, I began with 2 hexagons and the mirror modifier, and gradually build a 3D structure using the fill faces tool and by cutting in some additional edges with the knife tool, which is under K. At this stage, you don't need these lines going down the middle, because when you apply the subdivision modifier in a later step, you're going to have to remove some extra geometry. So that's one thing I'd warn against, but other than that, I found that this structure worked pretty well. Extrude up from the pelvis, then you block out, refine, subdivide, and sculpt to get the final result. For me, this was a huge challenge, especially because I had never done any 3D sculpting before, but here are the steps I took. For the blockout, I continued with 2am's tutorial and also referenced another YouTuber called Nij Kwang, whose name I'm probably butchering, to get an idea of what details I wanted to keep and how to organize my topology. In my case, what I wanted to keep were some notion of collarbone, in addition to a little bit of rib cage. What you'll notice about the male torso is that it's based on the female one. I did not start with a separate male pelvis and extrude up from there. I took my completed female blockout and then moved the vertices around to eventually work my way towards a male torso. Now, once I had my initial blockouts, what I did was refine them to clean up the topology a little bit. And then I applied the subdivision modifier. The hardest step was to go from this to the sculpted result. And I needed to reference a lot of anatomy for that, in addition to 3D models from other games. For me, sculpting was initially quite unintuitive, but after a little bit of practice, it became very natural, and I actually prefer it to edit mode for making large changes that don't need to be so precise. And just like with the leg holes from earlier, the arms and neck are also based on hexagons. So once we apply the subdivision modifier, we get 12 points for the neck, arms, and legs. Extrude out, and then I followed the same process to get the limbs. Now, I did have a false start where I tried extruding from the unsubdivided model to see if I could have an easier time doing it that way, but what I found was that after applying the subdivision modifier, it was too hard to get a good shape. So instead, what I did was to follow 2am's tutorial properly and extrude out from the post-subdivision torso. This way, what you can do is add edge loops for the minimum number of contours you need, and gradually refine from there. At this stage, I'm spending a lot of time making subtle edits to make small improvements to the models. Now, what I did to smooth out my topology is to follow 2AM's advice and to isolate parts of my model and to use the Loop Tool's Relax feature on individual loops, going vertically and horizontally. And to do that, I'm referencing anatomy books and 3D models from other games. At this point, I'm more familiar with the modeling process and I'm starting to feel more comfortable, so the feet were pretty straightforward. I didn't follow any tutorial in particular, but what I did was extrude out from the bottom of the legs to create this basic sock shape, and then I refined the shape a little bit more, applied subdivision, and then started to sculpt. Once I was happy with the shape, I cut off this sock area to start working on the toes. And just like with everything else in this devlog series, I started with hexagons. And then I added additional points along the sides to give enough geometry to add some roundness. And again, I'm just adding loop cuts to go around and then modeling out a nail shape. And then to avoid having too much density across the whole foot, I terminate the extra edge loops from the toes where they connect to the feet. To get a good shape at this stage, I'm referencing 3D models from other games in addition to anatomy books. Unlike with the previous steps, I started with the male side, and at the last step, I adjusted the geometry to get the female version. The hands were the second most challenging part of this process. 2AM has a brand new tutorial on how to model hands, which was not out at the time when I worked on this, so I referenced a time-lapse by a 3D artist called Kensho NY, who showcases a masterclass in VTuber topology. For the first two steps, I copied the topology from his video, and then for the fingers, I took a more simplified approach, again with hexagons. I definitely made things harder for myself by curving out the fingers, which is not something you need to do. So in the future, if I were to do this again, I will keep the fingers straight. And just like with the feet, I started with the male model and then transformed it into the female one through sculpting to get the big changes, and then edit mode with and without proportional editing to get the finer details. Once you have your hands and feet, the final step is to attach them to the body, and you do that by highlighting the openings and using the Bridge Edge Loops feature. Then you can clean up the topology by dissolving any points you don't need, and use Sculpt and Edit mode to move around the vertices, in addition to using loop tools. And again, through every step, I'm constantly making small adjustments to my model to make improvements, deciding what anatomy to keep versus simplify and how to stylize to fit the look I'm going for. While I'm quite happy with these meshes, given that it's my first time modeling characters with this level of detail, they're not perfect, and at this point, they don't need to be. My goal is to create a minimal demo that contains the essence of everything I want to showcase in my game. And in the future, if things go well, I'll be able to work with 3D artists who do this kind of thing professionally, and now that I have a bit of experience, I'll be able to collaborate with them in a more meaningful way. But for today, I want to get these models into my game demo. And for that, I'm using Mixamo's Auto Rig tool, so that means they need heads, which I model quickly without any reference. At this point, they're just placeholders until I model the designs that I have in mind. So just a few tips to get a result similar to mine. The key is to use references. I looked at models from various games that fit the kind of look I want to go for, and I referenced anatomy based on a couple books I picked up when I was learning how to draw. But keep in mind that for a top-down game of the type I'm trying to make, you don't need to keep all of the details. When it comes to anatomy and other art skills, my view is that you want just enough fundamentals so that you're able to model without needing to trace front, side, and back views. Because if you're able to understand and visualize forms, all you need are a few reference images, and you can have them off to the side as you work. And you can be much more creative. Thank you to my two Patreon members, Gregory and Dude. Your support is much appreciated. As a special bonus for this month, I've included the blend file containing all of the work in progress steps from this episode. And for everyone else, joining the channel as a member will give you access to all of the source code for my playtests, along with the 3D assets. You'll also get access to my Discord server, where recently there was a conversation on how to adapt my hex grid system for ranged projectiles. Don't forget to check out the free playtest linked in the description, and I'm looking for feedback on my movement system. So there's a 5-question survey if you're willing to help. Overall, I'm quite happy with how the character models turned out. I'm also quite surprised by how nice the Mixamo auto-rigging is. That said, there are definitely a few issues, specifically the shoulder, hip, and elbow deformations, which I'll be addressing next episode when I add bones and weight painting to prepare my models for animation. Subscribe for more episodes of my devlog, and I'll see you next time.